My parents mocked my career and kicked me out in the pouring rain. So I left, and years later watched them face the ruin they deserved. The day I was kicked out, it was raining. Not the gentle spring rain that nurtures flowers, but the kind that stings your skin and soaks through your clothes in seconds. I stood there, my hastily packed duffel bag getting heavier by the minute as water seeped into the fabric. "You're a disappointment, Oliver." My father's words cut through the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement. A complete failure. My mother stood behind him in the doorway, arms crossed, her face a mask of disapproval, the same face she'd worn when I told them I wanted to study computer engineering instead of taking over their precious mason industries. "All these years of grooming you for the company," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "and you throw it away for what? Some foolish dream of creating apps?" I was 18, fresh out of high school, and my crime was refusing to attend the business school they had chosen. I had different plans, different dreams. I wanted to build something of my own, not inherit their legacy. "If you walk away now," my father's voice turned cold, "don't ever come back. You'll get nothing from us. No support, no inheritance, nothing." I adjusted the strap of my bag and met his gaze. "Fine," I said. That one word seemed to shock them both. They had expected me to break, to give in like I always had before. But something had changed in me. Maybe it was the years of being compared to my perfect older brother James, or maybe it was just time to stop being the person they wanted me to be and start being myself. I turned and walked away, each step taking me further from the luxurious mansion I had grown up in. Their final words followed me down the driveway. "You'll fail, Oliver. You'll come crawling back when you realize how worthless your dreams are." But I didn't look back, not even once. The first few months were exactly as hard as they'd probably hoped. I crashed on my best friend Mike's couch, worked 2 jobs, one at a local electronics store during the day and delivering pizzas at night. Every spare moment was spent learning coding, developing my skills. Mike's tiny apartment became my sanctuary. While my family attended galas and business functions, I sat cross-legged on a worn-out couch, surrounded by programming books and energy drink cans, my laptop balanced precariously on my knees. "You're insane, man," Mike would say, watching me code until sunrise, but the good kind of insane. He didn't understand the technical aspects of what I was building, but he understood drive. He understood the need to prove yourself. 6 months in, I had my first breakthrough. A small app I developed caught the attention of a local tech startup. They didn't offer me millions, but they offered something more valuable. A chance. A junior developer position with flexible hours allowed me to continue working on my own projects. I took it without hesitation. My family's company, Mason Industries, was all about traditional manufacturing, tools, machinery, the kind of business that had made my grandfather rich in the 1960s. They couldn't understand why anyone would want to work with invisible products like software and apps. But I saw the future. While they were stuck in their old ways, I was learning about artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the endless possibilities of the digital age. 1 year turned into 2, then 3. I moved from the junior developer position to lead developer at another company. My first major app, a revolutionary project management tool, started gaining traction. I wasn't rich yet, but I was making enough to rent my own small apartment and fully focus on my work. During those years, I heard snippets about my family through mutual acquaintances. James had taken my place as the heir apparent to Mason Industries. My parents hosted charity galas and business dinners, maintaining their image as pillars of the business community. They had effectively erased me from their narrative. That was fine by me. I was building my own story. The turning point came 4 years after that rainy night. My project management app had evolved into something bigger, an entire suite of business tools powered by artificial intelligence. I called it Novatech Solutions. When the venture capital offers started coming in, I was ready. I had learned enough about business to know my worth. The first round of funding valued Novatech at $20 million. 6 months later, that value had tripled. I moved into a penthouse apartment in the city's tech district, but kept living relatively simply. Every dollar I earned went back into developing better products, hiring the best talent, and expanding our reach. Mike, who had supported me through those early days, became my head of operations. "Look at us now," he'd say, standing in our sleek office overlooking the city, from delivering pizzas to delivering cutting-edge tech solutions. I smiled at his comments but never let success go to my head. I remembered too well what it felt like to stand in the rain with nothing but a duffel bag and determination. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my office, reviewing potential acquisition targets, companies whose technology could enhance Novatech's capabilities. A familiar name caught my eye: Mason Industries. My family's company had been struggling. While I had been embracing the future, they had stubbornly clung to the past. Their stock price had been declining steadily for the past year. They needed a digital transformation to survive, but my father was too proud to admit it. I dug deeper into their financials. The situation was worse than I thought. They needed capital, and they needed it fast. About $5 million would keep them afloat long enough to modernize their operations. As I sat there, staring at the numbers on my screen, my phone rang. The number was one I hadn't seen in 7 years, but I would never forget it: my father's number. I let it ring 3 times, each ring echoing the words he had spoken that rainy night. "You're a disappointment, Oliver. A complete failure. Don't ever come back." On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Hello, Father," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I've been expecting your call." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought he might have hung up. Then I heard him clear his throat. "Oliver," he said, his voice lacking its usual authority, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline. "Yes," I replied, "I believe we do." The Mason Industries headquarters hadn't changed in 7 years. The same imposing granite facade, the same golden letters announcing the company name, the same stern-faced security guards at the entrance. But I was different. As I walked through the lobby, memories flooded back. Summer afternoons spent watching my father in board meetings, weekends when he dragged me along to inspect the factory floor, endless lectures about responsibility and legacy. "Mr. Mason," the receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she recognized my face. "Your father is expecting you in the main conference room." I nodded, adjusting my Italian suit. Not out of nervousness, those days were long gone, but out of habit. Success had taught me the importance of appearances, though unlike my family, I knew they were just that, appearances. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me time to review the numbers in my head. Mason Industries was hemorrhaging money. Their quarterly reports showed a 60% decline in profits. Their stock had plummeted from $85 to $12 per share. They needed more than just capital. They needed a complete overhaul. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene I couldn't have imagined 7 years ago. My father, the mighty Richard Mason, looked older, tired. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost. My mother sat beside him, her usually impeccable makeup slightly smudged, as if she'd been rubbing her eyes. James, my older brother, stood by the window. He'd gained weight, his face puffy from too many business dinners and too much stress. The golden boy didn't look so golden anymore. "Oliver?" my father said, standing up. He extended his hand, then seemed to think better of it and pulled it back. "Thank you for coming." I took a seat at the opposite end of the table, placing my briefcase carefully in front of me. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said. "I've seen your numbers." James turned from the window, his face flushing. "You've been spying on us?" "Publicly available information, brother," I replied. "Your company's decline isn't exactly a secret." My mother flinched at the word your. "Not our, not anymore." "We've had some setbacks," my father began, his voice taking on the smooth tone he used for difficult business negotiations. "The market has been unpredictable, and our traditional customer base, your traditional customer base, is shrinking because you've refused to adapt," I cut in. "The world is digital now. Manufacturing isn't just about machinery anymore, it's about smart factories, IoT integration, predictive maintenance using AI," James scoffed. "And I suppose you're the expert now with your little computer programs?" I pulled out my phone, opened a specific app, and projected Novatech's latest quarterly report onto the conference room screen. The numbers spoke for themselves. $500 million in revenue, 300% year-over-year growth. Contracts with Fortune 500 companies. The room fell silent. "You're the founder of Novatech?" my mother whispered. "CEO and majority shareholder," I confirmed. "Those little computer programs have built a company worth more than Mason Industries was, even in its prime." My father's face had gone pale. He remembered, I was sure, every dismissive word he'd ever said about technology, every time he called my dreams worthless. "We need $5 million, he said finally, his voice hoarse. "A bridge loan to implement necessary modernization changes. We can offer favorable terms." "I'm not interested in a loan," I interrupted, opening my briefcase. "I'm interested in acquisition." The word hung in the air like a thundercloud. James pushed away from the window, his face contorted with anger. "Acquisition? You want to buy us out? Your own family? Family?" I let out a quiet laugh. "Wasn't it you, James, who told everyone at your engagement party that you were an only child, that you'd never had a brother?" He took a step back, caught off guard that I knew about that. "Oliver," my mother began, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used to use when trying to make me study business textbooks instead of programming. "Surely we can work something out. We're still your parents." "No," I said firmly. "You lost the right to call yourselves that 7 years ago. This is purely business." I pulled out a thick contract from my briefcase and placed it on the table. "Novatech will acquire Mason Industries for $25 million. That's more than generous, given your current market value. We'll retain most of the workforce, modernize the facilities, and integrate your manufacturing expertise with our digital solutions." "And what about us?" James demanded. "What happens to the family?" I met his gaze steadily. "You'll be offered a position in the newly formed division, a junior position where you'll have to earn any promotions based on merit, not bloodline. Father can serve as an advisor during the transition, after which he'll retire with a comfortable pension. Mother's social connections might be useful for client relations, but that's up to her." My father's hands were trembling slightly as he reached for the contract. "And if we refuse?" "Then I leave," I said, "and you can try explaining to your shareholders why you turned down a lifeline. Your stock will probably drop another 50% by next week. You might last another month, maybe 2, then bankruptcy." The room fell silent except for the sound of paper rustling as my father slowly turned the pages of the contract. "You planned this," James accused, his voice bitter. "All these years you were just waiting for us to fail." I stood up, straightening my jacket. "No, James, I was too busy succeeding to waste time waiting for your failure. You did that all on your own." "How long?" my mother asked suddenly. "How long do we have to decide?" I picked up my briefcase. "The offer expires at midnight, not a minute later." "Midnight?" My father's voice rose. "That's impossible. We need time to review with our lawyers, to consider other options." "You don't have other options," I said calmly, "and you don't have time. 7 years ago, you gave me 5 minutes to decide my entire future. I'm giving you 12 hours. I'd say that's more than fair." I walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing." I turned back to face them. "When you sign, and you will sign, I want you to use the same pen you used to sign my college rejection letter, the one with the Mason Industries logo. I believe it's still in your desk drawer, Father." The look of shock on his face told me I was right. He remembered using it to dash my dreams all those years ago. "How did you—" "I'll be back at 11:45 p.m. I cut him off. "Try not to be late. Time is money, after all. Isn't that what you always taught me?" With that, I walked out, leaving them with their shattered pride and a contract that would change everything. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal and saw something I'd never seen in this building before. A winner. The next 12 hours would be interesting. Very interesting indeed. 11:43 p.m. The city lights sparkled below the Mason Industries conference room like scattered diamonds on black velvet. I stood at the same window where James had stood that morning, watching my reflection superimposed over the nighttime skyline. The door opened behind me, right on time. My father entered first, followed by my mother and James. They looked exhausted, as if they'd aged years in just 12 hours. I noticed my father clutching a small leather case, the one he kept his prized pens in. "The board has approved the acquisition," he said, his voice rough. Unanimously. I turned slowly, taking in their defeated postures. I expected nothing less. After all, what choice did you have? James slumped into a chair, loosening his tie. You've won, Oliver. Is that what you wanted to hear? No, I replied calmly. What I want to hear is the truth from all of you. My mother stepped forward, her designer dress wrinkled from a day of tense meetings. The truth about what? About why you really pushed me away. It wasn't just about the business school, was it? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, my father sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. You were too much like him, he said quietly, like your grandfather. That wasn't what I'd expected. Grandfather? The one who started Mason Industries? My father nodded, sinking into a chair. Harold Mason was a visionary. He saw the future coming before anyone else in the 1960s. When everyone was doing things the old way, he modernized, automated, took risks. The board thought he was crazy. Even his own father called him a fool. He pulled out the pen case, opening it with trembling fingers. But he proved them all wrong, built this company from nothing into an empire. And you, he looked up at me, you have that same look in your eyes, that same drive. It terrified me. Because you're not like him, I finished, understanding dawning. You're a maintainer, not a builder. You wanted the company to stay exactly as it was when you inherited it. I wanted stability, he whispered, safety. When you started talking about technology, about changing everything, I saw my father in you, and I remembered how scared I was every time he took another risk, launched another venture. My mother touched his shoulder gently. We thought we were protecting you, Oliver, and James was more like your father, I said, cautious, reliable. Boring, James interjected with a bitter laugh. That's what you mean, isn't it? I was the safe choice, the one who wouldn't rock the boat. I walked to the conference table, spreading my hands on its polished surface. And now look where we are. The safe choice led straight to bankruptcy. The crazy dreamer built a tech empire. We were wrong, my father said, and the words seemed to physically pain him. About everything. About you. He opened the pen case and removed the Mason Industries pen, the same one he'd used to reject my college plans 7 years ago. The gold logo caught the light as he placed it on the contract. Before I sign this, he said, I need to know what really happened after that night. How did you do it? I sat down across from him, feeling an unexpected urge to finally tell my story. The first few months were hell. Worked 2 jobs, lived on Mike's couch, coded until my eyes burned. But I had something you never gave me at home, freedom to fail. Freedom to fail? My mother echoed. Yes, because when you're already at rock bottom, when your own family has written you off as worthless, there's no pressure. Every small success is a victory, every failure is just another lesson. I pulled out my phone, showing them the first version of what would become Novatech's flagship product. This was my first app. Buggy, ugly, barely functional, but it worked. And each version got better. James leaned forward, actually interested for the first time. And the venture capital? How did you convince them to invest? I didn't, I smiled. They convinced me. By then I had paying customers, proven technology. I didn't need their money. They needed my innovation. Just like Mason Industries needs it now. My father picked up the pen, its weight seemingly greater than he remembered. And after we sign, what happens to us really? Exactly what I said this morning. James gets a fresh start, learning the business from the ground up. Mother can maintain the social connections that bring in clients. And you, Father, you get to watch your company become what it should have been all along, what grandfather would have wanted it to be. He pressed the pen to paper, then hesitated. Why didn't you just let us fail? You had every right to. Because that's not what successful people do, I replied. They don't destroy, they transform, they don't settle scores, they create opportunities. Everything you taught me about business was wrong, but everything grandfather built still has value. It just needs to evolve. 11:59 p.m. The scratch of the pen on paper was the only sound in the room as my father signed away his company. My mother wiped away tears as she added her signature. James, surprisingly, signed without hesitation. As I reached for the contract, my father grabbed my wrist, not roughly, but with an urgency I hadn't seen from him before. Oliver, he said, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry. For everything." I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at me with such disappointment, and saw something new there. Respect, maybe even a glimmer of pride. "I know," I said softly, taking the contract. "But it's not me you need to apologize to. It's yourself, for being too afraid to embrace change, for letting fear of failure stop you from trying anything new." "Can you ever forgive us?" my mother asked. I stood, tucking the contract into my briefcase. "I forgave you years ago. That's why I'm here now, saving what's left of Mason Industries instead of watching it crumble." "And us?" James asked. "Can we be a family again?" "That depends," I replied. "Are you ready to be part of a family where success isn't measured by how well you maintain the status quo, but by how bravely you face the future?" One by one, they nodded. "Then yes," I said. "We can try. Not as the Masons who kicked out their son for daring to dream differently, but as the Masons who learned that true legacy isn't about preserving the past, it's about building the future." I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. We have a company to rebuild." As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I thought about that rainy night 7 years ago, the scared 18-year-old with a duffel bag and a dream. If someone had told him that one day he'd own the building he was being kicked out of, he probably wouldn't have believed it. But that's the thing about dreams. They don't need anyone's permission to come true. They just need someone brave enough to chase them. Mike was waiting in my car outside. "How'd it go, boss?" I showed him the signed contract. "Mason Industries is now part of Novatech Solutions." He grinned. "And the family drama? That's a work in progress," I replied, looking up at the building that would now be part of my company, but for the first time in 7 years, it feels like there might actually be progress. "Just remember," Mike said as we pulled away from the curb, "no matter what happens with them, you've already proven yourself to yourself, and that's what matters." I nodded, watching Mason Industries shrink in the rearview mirror. He was right. Success wasn't about proving my parents wrong, it was about proving myself right. Everything else was just details. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, integrating the companies, modernizing the facilities, rebuilding family relationships. But I was ready for all of it. After all, I was Oliver Mason, the failure who succeeded, the reject who returned victorious, the son who surpassed his father's dreams by daring to dream his own. And this was just the beginning.